What's good, fam? It's your boy Jorge. Welcome back to another episode. Today's guest is the author of Saber-Tooth Tiger, The Real Reason Women Stay with Abusive Men. She is also MFT, marriage and family therapist. Today, I have Josee Perrine.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going very well. Very busy.
So you're a MFT. What else?
Yeah. I'm a marriage and family therapist and licensed clinical alcohol and drug therapist, counselor.
Okay.
So I'm what's called dually licensed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And your specialty mostly is in like family or marriage?
Mostly I do marriage and family therapy, counseling. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a strong background in helping people who have been in domestic violence situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I see people ranging from 4 years old clear up to senior citizens.
Okay.
So, individuals, families, couples.
And you have a practice here locally.
Yes, we have a practice. It's called Sierra Counseling and Neurotherapy. It's myself and my two partners, and we have, I think now, 12 clinicians on board.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd you get into this business?
I was in the 7th grade, and in those days we had to. It was an English class, and we had to read an article in a magazine or a book or something, and then we had to do a presentation in class. And my family didn't have a lot of. We had a lot of books, but we didn't have a lot of magazines that were coming in.
Okay.
So we got Reader's Digest.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an article in there about autism. And in those days, I'm old, so it's a long time ago, autism was very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 1% of the population or less. And at that time, they called it refrigerator mothers, that somehow mothers being very cold towards their children created autism. And I was always fascinated with mental illness. So I read that article and I presented it, and I have been interested in mental health since middle school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of got you that passion into mental health.
Yes.
But then once you got out of high school and you were going to go into college.
I didn't get to go to college.
Oh, no?
No, not out of high school.
Okay.
No. I didn't have money.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my family, no one in my family had ever gone to college. So I was married, had children, but when my children grew up, I started going back to school here at our local college and majored in WNC.
Oh, okay.
And majored in psychology, which I always loved. So I didn't get my bachelor's degree until I was 50, and I got my master's degree when I was 56.
And what'd you do from, I guess, high school till that time, as far as work or?
I had started at the University of Pittsburgh, so I had some credits that I was working on, but it was very expensive.
And that's where you're from?
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh?
From Western Pennsylvania, yep. And then got married, raised kids, all that time. Worked in different places, but always loved psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what got you back. Well, you always had that love.
Yeah.
So once you decided, you know what, I'm done raising kids.
Yep.
And I want to do something else. Then,
right.
Then
and I had an opportunity to go back
to
school. So I did that.
Yeah. And how did this, so you did the schooling, you graduated, you got your degrees and everything. And when did this book come about?
It was published in 2010, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And I am not a writer, so it was a chore. But I had worked at Advocates to End Domestic Violence. I volunteered there because I wanted to give back to that particular community. And in my experience of doing the counseling there, I did a couple of groups every week. I was always seeking what made you stay in the relationship.
Abusive relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's advocates for domestic violence.
Oh,
It's
okay.
solely for victims of domestic violence, and they have a shelter. So when I was doing the counseling, I would ask people, what do you think would happen if you left? And typically women would say, well, my kids will starve. And I would say, really? How many times have you seen starving children here in our community?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we don't. We have agencies that take care of those kinds of things. And so they would say, okay. And I would say, what do you think is going to happen? Well, he'll kill me. And to that I would respond, it's a lot easier to kill you if you're living with him than if you leave.
Yeah.
You know, you can get restraining orders. They're helpful to some degree. You can move. You can protect yourself. Reasonable precautions. But eventually I would just keep asking, what do you think is going to happen? And inevitably, we would get to a place where they would say, I'll be alone.
Mm.
And so then I would say, what do you mean? Aren't you ever alone? Don't you go shopping by yourself or spend time in your house alone? And they'd say, of course.
Yeah.
And I'd say, how does that feel? And there was the hard word for them to say. They would say, I'll be lonely.
Mm.
Lonely. I heard it over and over and over again.
That's interesting, because I thought where you're going with that, they were going to just run out of excuses and then just be like, oh, yeah.
Nope.
So the ending was always the
Always
lonely.
lonely. And this is not every person who is in an abusive relationship is going to fit this particular dynamic that I'm going to talk about. If the person has been in one relationship and it turns abusive and they leave,
Mm-hmm.
that's healthy, you know.
Yeah.
But people who were in a relationship and stayed in that relationship, or got out of that relationship and got in the next abusive relationship and the next abusive relationship, and what happens is they get worse and worse and worse.
Uh-huh.
The abuse just with the next person is always more abusive.
And that's because the person that's being abused already just lets it happen, so it's easier to like be abused harder, I guess. Or they get with like, or they seek out a person that's more abusive.
There's a whole dynamic that happens. Women, we have had men in our group also.
Oh, okay, I was going
who
to
were
ask
in
that.
abusive relationships, and that's a little bit different. But for women, when we explore further, what I started doing in the research for the book was I wanted to see what kind of research has been done on loneliness, and I didn't find very much. The only one that's mentioned in my book is a man from Israel. I forget his name since I wrote the book a long time ago. But he describes two types of loneliness. One is called a condition of doing, and the other is a condition of being. So like if you're lonely, somebody, you break up with somebody and they move away, you feel lonely.
Yeah.
That's the loneliness of doing. You have been in a relationship. The second type, and this is what happens with women who have been in abusive relationships, there is a loneliness of being. And that derives from childhood.
Oh.
So what I saw over and over again with working with people in the shelter was that if you looked at their childhood, it was pretty much parents who may have loved their children, but were very poor at expressing it, or they had working all the time, or they were drunk, or they were high, or they really didn't have time for their children. There was not an expression of caring. And I back that up with some research called still face research. I'll talk about it. But so this core profound loneliness from childhood, very early childhood, set people up to be attracted to people with particular traits, and those people happen to be abusive. I should have brought my red flags list.
Mm.
It's in the book, too, if I remember where to look for it. But people who, there have been instances where people told me that, you know, maybe their mother was abusive, physically abusive, emotionally, whatever. And they would love their dad. Oh, my dad was a great guy. And I'd say, well, where was your dad while this was going on? And the woman said, he was in the other room.
Yeah.
She never thought that he was complicit because he never stopped the abuse.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be physical abuse from childhood. It can be just what I call benign neglect. You kind of just let the kids go. There isn't a real interest or concern.
So I feel like I'm pretty normal, you know? So when you say those things, the first thing that pops into my head is, well, if you kind of grew up, and I know this is per person, not the whole population's like this, or, you know, so I know it's per person, but so the first thing that I think of is if you went through that kind of trauma or whatever when you were a young person, wouldn't you want to be as an adult, grow up, not want that? So you go through that loneliness. So then when you're older, you're like, well, I have a choice now. I could do this. So then I don't want to be lonely. So that's kind of how I feel like most normal people.
As far as parenting, that's very true. People who grow up with that loneliness, when they do marry or have kids, they are smothering parents. They give the kids everything they didn't have. So if I wasn't told that I was loved, by God, I'm going to tell my kids every chance I get that they are loved. It's giving what you need yourself instead of what your children may actually need. So in that regard, most people are very loving parents who have grown up with that loneliness. What they find, though, is once those little kids grow up and they become young adults and they go away, there is that loneliness again. You know,
is there the opposite of giving your kids too much attention, and like what you just said, that so it's kind of like a vicious cycle, maybe?
Is there such a thing as too much love? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think maybe with the generation now, you kind of see kids being a little bit more soft, and you know, we're in a generation where it's like participation trophies, and you know, like let's not hurt no one's feelings and stuff like that. Like helicopter parents as well.
No, I'm not real big fan of that.
Yeah, you're old school.
I think children need. It's a tough world, so I think you need to
be tough.
Teach them, you know, what they need to be okay in the world. Yeah.
Is there a percentage, and I know it probably changes, but is there a percentage, you know, you're talking about the abuse and staying in an abusive relationship, and what are you scared of? Oh, he might kill me. And you're like, well, it's harder to kill you if you're far from him than, or her, or whatever it is.
Right.
Is there a percentage on the women or the people that do get killed in an abusive relationship? Is it pretty high if they stay in it? Or is it just the abuse continues forever?
In my own experience, there was a woman in our group who came to the shelter. She was pregnant, had the baby while she was in the shelter. You're only allowed to stay in the shelter for a certain amount of time. And so she became employed. She moved out. She went back with the boyfriend. And I got up one morning and read in the news, and there was her picture. and she had been murdered and thrown in Brunswick Canyon. And her boyfriend had killed her, stabbed her numerous times, and her little baby was in the truck while this was going on. So I have known some very severe cases. I don't know what the percentage is. I know that it is too high.
So eventually, if you do stay long enough, it does lead down that road.
It can get very serious. Back in the 1970s, and this is why I wrote the book, back in the 1970s when the women's movement was first starting, well, I don't want to say first starting, but it was at its height, let's say. And there was a lot of conjecture that there would not be domestic violence if women had good jobs, could be employed, make their own living, would not need men to support them.
Yeah.
And they said domestic violence would go away because women could be independent, wouldn't have to rely on boyfriends and husbands.
Who was saying that?
That was mostly, there were many books at that time.
Like men written or women written?
By sociologists or social workers, anybody in the field.
Yeah.
I mentioned some of them in the front of the book. But what actually happened is domestic violence increased by the 1990s.
Yeah.
Because what happened, that the financial end of it was not the reason women were staying. It was the exact same thing of that loneliness, that fear. And it is so critical. I mean, it is so, can you imagine a person who stays with someone who is threatening to kill them? They live in fear every day that they're with that person. But being lonely is even more scary. And that's why I named the book The Saber-Toothed Tiger, because I wanted to convey how scary that feeling is for people. And the saber-toothed tiger was probably the scariest animal that ever lived. And so that's why I wanted that. I wanted to convey how scared people are of being lonely. Can I go into the still face studies?
Yeah.
Still face studies were done, I think, in the 80s, 90s. They took little babies, and they started out with a little bit older children because, they didn't want to experiment with little babies.
Yeah.
But eventually they replicated the studies with even younger children. And they would have a booth, sort of like a photography booth, where you have the curtain around, and then you have it around the other person. And they would have the baby in the little car seat, the little seat over here. And the mom would sit over here. And the mom was instructed for 1 minute to interact with the baby. And so mom would talk to the baby, make eye contact, play games, and the little baby would be laughing and making eye contact. And then mom would get up and leave. And the baby couldn't see because the curtain's around it. And they have the baby hooked up to galvanic skin response, heart rate monitor, all of that. And as the baby sees mom leaving, the baby begins to get anxious, all of these signs of anxiety. Then they leave mom gone for 1 minute, have her come back in. But in the next section, she is not to look at the baby except over his head. So there's no eye contact, and she's instructed to keep a still face, and that's why the name Still Face Studies. So she doesn't make any emotional reaction. She looks over the top of the baby. Within seconds, the baby becomes so anxious, and within a minute or two, the baby is hunching over into a fetal position. That's how that no contact with the baby, how stressful it is for a baby. You take a baby who is maybe in a home where there's a lot of drug addiction, fed, put in a crib, gets his diaper changed. But nobody's making eye contact with him. Nobody's holding him. Nobody's singing to him. Nobody's playing with him. That's what happens. And so you have children who grew up in homes, perfectly normal homes. Mom's, dad's gone to work, making dinner, whatever. But if that child has not had that type of interaction with a caregiver or a parent, they have that profound disconnect and lack of love. And that's where that loneliness comes from. Every one of the people that I have worked with, and it's been 20 years that I worked with women, every one of them, when I said, tell me about your mother, same story. In some way, not loved, neglected, cared about, but did not feel loved, at least the way they needed to be loved. One woman, she was very, very sick when she was a baby, and in fact, her parents were told she was probably going to die. Who connects with a child that's going to die?
Right.
You know, to protect yourself, you don't get close to that child. So her, from the beginning of life, there was that disconnect, that distance between her and her parents, where she lived. And then the next child came along who was nice and healthy, and the parents connected with that child, raised in the same family. One grew up to be in abusive relationships, the other one didn't.
Yeah. And when you have these conversations with these people and it's the same story, they can recollect those stories like vividly, or because I can't even tell you, I don't even remember if my mom or dad looked at me. You know what I mean? Like I can't, obviously that wasn't my case. So I'm not sitting here saying, but I can't remember. So it's interesting.
I think it's profound.
Okay.
And so it has such an effect.
So it's a trauma.
Yeah, that they remember the feeling. They remember the feeling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In fact, I ask people sometimes, what's your first emotional memory? What's your first emotional memory?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't remember a birthday party feeling happy, or being in trouble and feeling sad?
I think I remember like my first Christmas.
Oh, was it a good one?
Yeah.
Okay. Happy feeling?
Yeah.
Excited?
Yeah, surprised.
Surprised?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your first emotional memory. People who are in abusive relationships, you ask them what their first emotional memory is. I would always ask 3 questions. Tell me 3 ways you felt growing up. Think about your childhood, elementary school, high school, and they'll say things like, not good enough, empty. Lonely is always one of those words. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Which tells you a lot about the state of people today. Now we have people, especially after COVID, kids that were not in school, people who were living alone. I think the statistic now is that over 50% of adults live alone, not in relationships.
Or with parents.
Not living with people. So there's a lot of loneliness. Yeah. And abuse just keeps going up.
Yeah. Why is the abuser their abuser, you think?
Why is an abuser abusive? 2 kinds. There's people who, one of the gentlemen, I forget his name, who started this theory, said there are 2 types, and I believe that is accurate. One he mentions is the cobra, and the other is the pit bull. And people, I'm going to say men, because 90% of abuse is perpetrated by men.
Yeah.
The pit bulls are the people who simply don't have good skills, relationship skills, communication skills, and so they get frustrated.
Do they lack one skill, or they lack all of those skills?
Probably more than one.
Okay.
They haven't learned to express emotions. They get frustrated. They're in an argument with somebody, and out of frustration, they may push the woman, hit her in the arm, something like that. This is not thought out. They just don't have skills to communicate. They don't know how to manage their own anger. And then there's the cobras. And those are the people who know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Most people, when they're angry, their blood pressure goes up, they start moving around. There's all kinds of symptoms that show that there's anger, that the adrenaline is dumping. The cobras are the sociopaths. These are the really terrible abusers.
Yeah.
When they start beating on somebody, their blood pressure actually goes down. They are very calm. They know exactly what they're doing. They like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those type of abusers, those are people who, typically can be diagnosed as sociopaths, antisocial personality disorder. Their whole agenda is power and control. They don't have feelings for other people. They don't have empathy. As long as they're getting what they want in a situation, they will continue. And there isn't really a benefit for them to change. There's no payoff. There's no reward.
Yeah.
Because as long as they're controlling,
in power,
they get everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is, and I mean, it sounds bad, but, if you're being abused, I think you should leave completely, regardless. But is there any information that's put out there to see the difference in the two? So if someone is getting abused, they shouldn't stay. But at the same time, if it's you're oh man, my person is a cobra type, I really need to leave.
Yeah. The problem with that is, and this is why so many people stay, there's been so much manipulation.
Yeah.
There's been so much brainwashing. Things like, this is pretty common. The man says to the woman, I know you're cheating on me. Where did you go when you went to the grocery store? You were 5 minutes late. And she says, no, I went to the grocery store. I know you're fucking everybody in town.
Yeah.
Well, you're a whore. And this starts. And she defends herself. She says, no, I was with my girlfriend. Look, I can show you on my phone where I was at. He continues. The words get worse. The accusations get worse. So she then begins to not have girlfriends, right? She's going to try to make him happy.
Yeah.
So she doesn't go anywhere. So now she's isolated. There's also an aspect of this controlling. They always criticize your family. Your family's no good. What do you want to go with them for? So then you give up your family.
What if they're not good, though?
They could be not good.
Okay.
But they will find something. Then if she begins to give up and she says, you're right, I'm fucking everybody in town. Then it's, see, I knew you were lying to me.
Yeah.
And then he'll go to the kids and he'll say, see, your mom's a whore.
And they know that it's not true. They're making that up.
Oh, they make it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so then she's got the kids now who are listening to their dad because they know they're better or they're going to be in trouble too.
Yeah.
So now she's even isolated from her children.
Does that abuse on a person like that also go to the kids?
It depends. The girls, they'll be just doted on when they're little.
Yeah.
My little princess. The moment she begins to get her own thoughts, she wants to wear makeup, she wants to go out with her friends, you're a whore.
Then the controlling.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just like your mom. Boys, when they're in this situation, grow up to be very, very angry because they're not big enough to stand up to their dads.
Yeah.
They see their dad beating up their mom. They can't protect their mom.
They turn into the pit bull?
No.
No?
They just grow up very angry.
Just very angry?
Yeah. Typically, depends. I see it both ways.
Yeah.
Some men will grow up to be abusive because they're just so angry. And then others will be very protective of their mothers and be good husbands and good boyfriends. But if you marry somebody, if you're in a relationship with somebody, typically abusers have, like I said, have characteristics. And they are the most charming people you could ever meet. So when they first meet somebody, it's like, oh, you're beautiful. Let me take you to dinner. They'll bring flowers. They just, I guess it's called love bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are so attentive. But over time, and I have talked to several, I don't want to say numerous, but too many women who, up until they were married, great relationship.
Didn't know.
The night of the wedding, it got beat up. Like, who does that?
I just want to say no one likes me when they first meet me.
You're not charming.
Yeah, I'm not charming. No one likes me at first. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and so there you are, you're married, or you're pregnant. And this abuse, and most abuse starts when a woman's pregnant. Yeah, because there's competition. He wants everything. So over time, you just get brainwashed. You get more isolated. You don't hear anybody's voice but his own.
But what's the difference between, so say that happens, you get that Cobra person in your life, everything's great, wedding night, then you get beat up, and you're just a regular person, not with that loneliness thing.
Yeah.
You're just normal.
Healthy people.
Yeah. How do
get
they
the hell
leave?
out of there?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But the person, I have a whole chapter in the book. It's called Oatmeal. So I liken people who grow up with this loneliness, like every day of their life, if all they ever got was oatmeal, and that's all they knew, right?
Yeah.
So they have oatmeal 3 times a day. And then they get to be in maybe junior high school. They go to their friend's house saying, damn, this friend's got some steak. Look at them, peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, mac and cheese.
Yeah, mac and cheese. So they come home and they say, Ma, I went to Susie's house and they had like steak and they had baked potatoes. Do you think I could have some of that? And Mom says, don't be silly. Of course you have that. So the kid thinks, great, I'm going to get something other than oatmeal. Next meal comes, oatmeal. No raisins, no brown sugar, no milk, just oatmeal. So all your life you get emotional oatmeal. You get enough to stay alive, but not to feel truly loved or cared about. And then you go out in the world and you meet a charming guy who gives you a hot fudge sundae.
Yeah.
Which is my favorite. So you get a sugar rush like you have never felt in your entire life. And so that's the attraction. Like, oh, I'm visible. Somebody sees me. They love me. Oh, God, this feels so good. And that's why abusers know those people.
Okay.
It's like a wolf and a lamb.
Yeah.
The person needs to be loved so much. They need to be visible. And they meet this person who just love bombs them. And there you go. One of the red flags, in fact, is if quick involvement. The guy who asked you to marry him 3 weeks after you met him. That's a big red flag.
So it took me 14 years.
I know.
See?
No abuse there.
Yeah,
huh?
no. So to transition out of the topic, but real quick. So you get these women, you talk to them, you get down to the base root of everything, which is your loneliness. So what do you do then for them to move on and then get into another relationship where they can feel that or change that loneliness?
Yeah, well, typically you start with self-love.
Oh, okay.
I give them an exercise to do. And I said, okay, you've got to face loneliness. If this is your biggest fear, like any fear, the only way through it is to face it. You climb out of the foxhole and head towards the enemy, right?
Yeah.
So I say, you go home, you find a blank wall. You can't have any pictures on it, can't have any plug-ins, outlets. You find an empty wall in your house. Get an uncomfortable chair. I don't want you to fall asleep. And you sit in front of that wall.
That's it.
Nothing. No music, no phone, no TV, no radio, no meditation. You can pray a little bit, but not very much. You sit.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you to do that exercise, what would your response be?
I mean, I'm a person that if I'm there for an issue, I would do it. So if I go to the doctor and they say, hey, you should do this. So I would do it, but I wouldn't. That sounds very boring.
Yeah, how long would you sit? If I told you to sit for half an hour,
I guess half an hour.
you could do it.
I would make myself do it.
Lonely people. That's the loneliness, right? I tell them to do it when no one's home.
Yeah.
They have to be alone. They tell me they will jump out a window before they will do that.
Mm.
They will. One person said, no, I'm never going to do that. Some people make it a minute, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
They feel really good at 5 minutes. Eventually, if they do it and they sit there for a good half hour, that loneliness, it'll just bubble up. They'll just be sitting there crying. It'll just come out. All of pain just comes out. And they'll recognize this hurts, but I can do it. I can manage lonely. I've had it described as like an empty spot that never completely heals up inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can get smaller, but it never goes away.
Yeah.
There's always that missing part because you can never have mom back. That it's so essential. And so that relationship with mothers is just so crucial, or caregiver, It's so crucial to development. So you always are left with that little bit of loneliness. It's there. But if they can do that, and then we do self-love, okay, if I were an alien and I came down to Earth and I happened to just run into you, for example, if I were, and I saw you and I said, hey, here's a human being that looks like an average human being, and I was an alien, and I couldn't speak your language, but I was just going to observe you. How would I know that you love yourself?
Because I make myself laugh, and
Okay.
I tend to smile to myself because I make myself laugh and stuff like that in my own head. Something like that, I guess. I do things that I enjoy.
Okay.
So
you got a nice hat.
Yeah. But like I ride dirt bikes, so they probably see me go out riding dirt bikes and they say like, oh, what's this guy doing? Oh, it looks like he's having fun.
Yeah. And you have things that you do that you enjoy.
Yeah.
So you treat yourself well.
Mm-hmm.
You have a nice house, you raise your children well, you take them things they're involved in.
Mm-hmm.
So you love. You love yourself. I ask women in abusive relationships that, how would I know you love yourself? They say you wouldn't.
Because I don't.
They're so kind of beaten down, You come out of those relationships not even knowing your own thoughts. You've been told you're always trying to keep things copacetic. And so whatever the man says, you agree with, so that you don't even have your own thoughts. So they have to really start. I always say no contact with your abuser. I don't care if he calls you. I don't care if he shows up at your door. You call the cops. No contact. You don't date for 2 years. You learn to be lonely. You learn to be independent. You learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You learn to love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, it's impossible to love another person.
Right.
So that's the healing. That's the work that needs to be done. And then after 2 years, you can practice date. That means you go out with your checklist.
No, that's smart because, if you go out and you're like, okay, you're free to date, the first person you date, you're probably jump into it.
It's always an abuser. Yeah.
Or just jump into it when it's like, so practice.
Get a practice date.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The process, when I have a person I'm seeing in counseling who's in this situation, we go through that whole process together.
Yeah.
Inevitably, the first person they pick is another abuser, but they notice the signs because we've talked about it by then. And then, so they break that off.
And you think that's because they're looking for that in a way in the back of their head, or is because the abuser sees them And
same program.
okay.
Yeah, from childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a theory that people who have come out of those kind of childhoods, men or women, who eventually are in a situation that's traumatic and end up with post-traumatic stress disorder, they're kind of primed for it in childhood. Yeah.
It's crazy to me. All this stuff.
You're so healthy.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it kind of sounds like common sense, but I think it's important to have these conversations because, like I said, when you first started talking, the first thing that popped into my head was like, oh, they're going to run out of excuses and then it's kind of over. But no. It gets to the deep root of the problem.
Yeah.
And most people don't think like that.
Yeah. And when you said common sense, I tell people all the time, if people thought, I'd be out of business.
Yeah.
But they feel, so I am in business.
Right.
Because feelings actually drive our behavior more than our thinking. I used to use Bill Clinton as an example. Like, he's a Rhodes Scholar, smart man. Has sex with an intern in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
Now, anybody on the street, if you said, hey, do you think it's a good idea? They'd have said, no, it's not a good idea. He's going to get caught. It's going to be a scandal.
Yeah.
He didn't do that because he was thinking. He did it because he was feeling. He might have felt powerful. He might have felt lonely. Things weren't going too well in the White House at the time. Whatever he was feeling. That drove his behavior, not his thinking.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the dumb, have you ever done anything dumb in your life?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it from thinking?
No. Yeah, because you don't think about the consequences. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
If you're out drinking and you're having a great time. I know as teenagers, you get in a car with somebody who's been drinking, right? Hey, we're having fun. This feels great. Now, if you ask them, is this a good idea? No. But we're having fun. It's feelings.
Yeah. So you're talking about this, this derives from the lack of the mother there. So there is that kind of funny stereotype on the other scope being the females having daddy issues. And, they say that, they become prostitutes or strippers and stuff like that. Is that accurate or?
Yeah, there's a whole theory there. It's called object relations theory. And there's sexual imprinting that takes place when we're children, that we tend to marry people who are like our fathers or our mothers. And it tends to be, I think it's very, very accurate. The original theory started with Freud. It changed dramatically since then. His was, you got to give him credit for the first thought of it anyway, but the theory says that you will hook up with, become involved with someone who is most like the parent that you have the most to work out with. Say your father or mother is an alcoholic. Say it's a kid, a guy. His mother's an alcoholic. And he grows up and he says, I'm never going to marry a woman who drinks. I will guarantee you that man will marry an alcoholic woman, even if he isn't drinking, if she isn't drinking the first time that they get together. There's another part to that theory, too, that says that you shape the person. You will do things to make them more like your mother and father. So maybe the kid, the girl he picks isn't drinking very much, but she goes out once in a while and she drinks. Maybe she gets drunk once in a while. You want a beer? You want to go out tonight? So he begins to shape her into using more and more alcohol to be like his mother so he can correct things. Because you can never correct them with your parents because your parents are always the parents.
Yeah.
So you choose somebody on your role level.
So you ruin someone to fix them.
Fix them.
Huh, that's interesting.
You want to make it right.
What if you're, say your mother's great and you're trying to make your...
Hey, if you got great parents, that's wonderful.
Okay.
You grow up and you marry somebody who's healthy. In my business, I don't see it a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, what if your mother is great and you're trying to make your partner into your mother?
You'll probably pick somebody who's very much like your mother
Oh, okay.
and is a good person.
Okay.
You know, good mother,
So it's pretty simple.
good partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the stuff. What I
Okay.
think, I don't know, maybe more people are interested in. I don't know. I got some stats here and see if you agree or what you see. Because
Okay.
I'm sure it varies from location. But divorce, relationships,
Mhm.
like, I guess if you're divorced, you're not a healthy relationship, but not abusive or anything like that. We're talking more like normal people and
They just kind of
divorce.
grow apart or
Yeah.
something like that.
So it says the most common reason for divorce in 2024, last year, include lack of commitment, infidelity, and conflict. Other reasons can include financial disagreements, unrealistic expectations, unmet needs, addiction and substance abuse, domestic violence and abuse, and rushing into marriage.
Yeah.
In your professional experience, let's just narrow it down to maybe last year, 2024. What do you think was if you saw much divorce, what was it about?
Sometimes people come into counseling too late and there's just too much damage done and they get divorced. So they don't seek help for the problems early enough.
Right.
There's just too much damage. But I would say, from my experience, what I see, the most damaging thing to a relationship is betrayal of trust. And that ties in with finances, like you said, financial differences.
Mm-hmm.
The person isn't honest about where they're spending the money.
Mm-hmm.
Are they gambling?
Yeah.
Or you said you're supposed to put your half in for the rent and it's not there. I can't trust you to have a stable finances here. So that's a betrayal of trust.
Oh, okay. So it's not necessarily the money aspect of it, but it's the betrayal of trust.
Under what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with sexual infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to trust your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people, we have a great access to pornography now. It's not just in a magazine. It's live. It's all day long if you want it.
Well, we live in a place where it's legal prostitution.
Yeah. And so I say anything that takes the emotional content out of the marriage, when there's emotional energy going out of the relationship, that's a betrayal of trust.
So pornography is a betrayal of trust, in your opinion?
Plus, it's damaging the people who are involved in it.
Right.
Yeah. People think it's a non-victim crime, but if I've known quite a few prostitutes and seen them, because it's legal here, so sometimes they come for counseling.
Oh, that's good.
And every one of them was abused as a child. And there are so many restrictions. This is not healthy, So that's a betrayal of trust in a relationship. What were some of the other ones?
Unrealistic expectations, unmet needs.
That's a lack of communication, where people don't talk before they get together. A person says, I want to get married and I want to have kids. I want that commitment. And you said one of them was lack of commitment.
Yeah.
And the other person, because they like the relationship, will say, yeah, me too. But they don't really. And so they kind of delay the relationship. They don't have children. They don't get engaged. They don't get married. The woman is getting older and older, and she's got the biological clock thing going on.
Yep.
And so there's a betrayal of trust. I can't trust what you're telling me. And people are afraid to say, this is what I want. They say, oh, it makes me sound desperate. No, it makes you sound honest.
Yeah.
If this is what you want, say it. I mean, there are relationships, and I know people who are swingers. I know people who have open relationships.
Can I get their numbers?
No.
Just joking. That's against HIPAA.
There is confidentiality, And some people who have open relationships, but they have rules around it. They've got to approve each other's benches.
Yeah.
They've got to approve where the behavior takes place and with whom, So there are rules around it, but they go into that relationship with that already as an understanding. If you get halfway into the relationship and you've got a couple kids and the person says, I really want an open marriage or open relationship, that's too late.
Yeah.
Because the other person, you've betrayed their trust. You told them one thing.
More often than not, open relationships, open marriages, both of them going into it knowing it and agreeing to it, they never work out. I feel like there's always something that happens that someone.
It usually is. Yeah, something happens.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird one.
Well, there's a whole chemical reaction that's taking place.
Mm-hmm.
How deep do you want to get into this?
As deep as we can get.
Okay. Our brains have a chemical, more than one, but this one I'm going to talk about is called oxytocin.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they discovered this chemical was with mountain voles. They're kind of like little prairie dogs.
Okay.
And there are two kinds of voles. One is a mountain and one is a valley. And scientists thought they're the same critter, right? But they noticed that the mountain voles, when they had a partner, they stayed with that partner. The valley ones, screwing everybody, right? So they said, wait, same species. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So, of course, like any good scientist, they took them apart, took their brains, studied them, and they found that the mountain voles had more oxytocin in their brains.
Mm-hmm.
Oxytocin, of course, then they went to humans and said, probably humans have this, right? And it bonds us with people. So, of course, they found that we have oxytocin in our brains. Women have 5 times as much oxytocin as men.
Yeah.
And oxytocin is through massage and touch, so through sex, orgasm. Oxytocin is what prepares the body to give birth to a baby. And then when the baby is born and they're nursed, tons of oxytocin. That's why we keep our kids, even if they puke and poop on us all the time and wake us up all night. But we're so devoted to those kids, we'd kill for them, right? We'd die for our kids.
Yeah.
That's how strong that bond is. How often do you think men get oxytocin?
Just while sex.
5 seconds before orgasm, ejaculation. So I always tell women, when you think you're just picking this guy up because he's good in bed, and then 6 months later, he's sitting on your couch drinking a beer, no job, borrowing your car to go get some drugs, and your friends say, how come you're with this loser guy? And you say, but I love him. That's the oxytocin that has bonded you with the loser guy. So do not have sex with anyone until you have known them for 6 months. People can be what's in called performance mode for a good 6 months. They can quit drinking so much, they can quit drugging so much, maybe not gamble so much, maybe not cheat, maybe not lie for 6 months because they want to have you in their life. 6 months it begins to crack. Then you begin to see who they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in performance mode all the time.
Good for you.
Yeah, so another rushing into marriage.
That goes with the red flag of quick involvement.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You don't know the person.
Right.
People say, like, I went to have sex with somebody on a first date. I'm thinking, you don't even know if that person could be an axe murderer.
Yeah.
What's the most intimate thing you can do with a person?
Have sex?
Nope.
No? Conversation?
Nope.
Holding hands?
Nope.
I don't know.
Sleep. Think about it. You're going unconscious with another human being. They could steal your wallet.
Yeah.
They could put a knife in you. You could be like Lorena Bobbitt, cut his dick off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most trusting thing you can do is fall asleep with somebody. Yeah. That's the most intimate you can be. So that's why I always say, man, don't be falling asleep with people you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get your credit cards.
Oh, yeah. So in 2024, the divorce rate in the United States is between 40 and 50% for the first marriage, according to modern family law. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, that's been a number that's been around a long time.
Okay.
About half of marriages.
And then the other divorce statistics in 2024, 60% of second marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
73 of third marriages end in divorce. And 36 of U.S. adults getting divorced are age 50 and older.
Yeah.
All sound pretty accurate to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to dive into that a little bit because I was kind of under the impression when someone once got a divorce and then maybe they got into the second marriage, even though now that I'm saying this, I'm thinking in my head when people say, oh, this is my fifth marriage. So it makes sense. They get divorced all the time. But I kind of was under the assumption that once you divorce once and you get into a different relationship and married, then you kind of stay in that one. And then also, why would it be that 36% of adults getting divorced are age 50 and older?
Usually, like the second marriage, a lot of times it's kind of a rebound.
Okay.
So they're going to get, it's not good. They get married and get divorced. 36% over 50.
Over 50.
50.
Or age 50 and older.
I think people are more independent. They don't need to get married.
No, but they're already married, so they
so they got divorced and then they don't remarry again.
Yeah, because they're just independent.
Yeah,
don't care.
There's really a trend of older people being together apart, because a lot of times you own a house and the other person owns a house, and you don't want to sell those houses. You want to leave them to your kids, and so they're in a relationship, but they have separate houses.
You go spend the night.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's like a lot of older women never remarry.
Yeah.
By that time, there's that old saying about young women are young men's lovers, middle-aged men's housekeepers, and old men's nurses. I think it's true.
Divorce rates may vary by state, but with Midwestern and Northeastern states generally have lower rates of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that because there's nothing to do in those states, so you kind of just stay.
No, I think it's cultural. I grew up in Pennsylvania, lived in Rhode Island for a while. Nobody in my family was ever divorced except one aunt. And I only met her
Shame on her.
I know it. She was shamed. I never met her except at my grandfather's funeral. And then it was like pariah. She had been divorced. Nobody talked about her. Nobody talked to her. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very interesting because in my own family, every one of the children were divorced except one. And she still lives back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more cultural. It's real traditional.
Okay. And that goes with the next thing. The United States has a higher divorce rate than the global average. So that's more cultural.
Freedom.
There's cultures. Okay.
Yeah.
More freedom here.
More freedom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
Yeah.
I think just in general with everything, we covered this on the show here before, but just we have it too good. And I think we forget that we are in a country where we have these freedoms and everything. So we like to complain a lot of our freedoms when other places don't have anything.
Is there such a thing as too much freedom? Probably.
I think we have it.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for it, of course. I'm not saying otherwise.
I think, but there's that saying about what one generation tolerates, the next embraces. So my generation tolerated drugs. Now we have a fentanyl epidemic. So there was the embracing of that kind of behavior. I think we have the freedom to divorce. Things get too difficult. I think that lack of commitment, there's this person in the relationship and this person, but there's also the relationship. And you have to be committed to the relationship. That as long as there is not infidelity, as long as there's not abuse, if both people are genuinely committed to one another and to the relationship, and I don't think people are anymore. We can change things pretty easily. Yeah.
I just thought these were kind of interesting. It says Black women usually have the highest divorce rates. Asian women get married at a higher rate and have less or are less likely to get divorced. And the divorce rate among people 50 and older has doubled in the last 20 years. Yeah, so marry Asian if you want to stay married, I guess it says.
I think that's cultural.
Cultural.
Again, dedication to the family.
I like
so
that.
There isn't just you and me in a relationship. There is you and me and children and extended family. And a divorce hurts not just the two people in it. It hurts the kids. It hurts the extended family. They may feel like they have to take a side, So we've lost, people move around so much anymore too, that we're not as close to our immediate families a lot of times. We were talking early and I was, your mom and dad are within walking distance.
Yeah.
I think that's great for your kids, So we don't have that extended family that kind of gives that coherence, cohesion to a family. And looking forward to grandchildren being married and great-grandchildren, that sense of family.
Yeah. Can you give me the top 3 things, and I know it's probably easier said than done, but top 3 things that you can do to have a healthy marriage?
Don't rush into it.
Okay, let's say a relationship, not even a marriage. So even people listening to this have have a girlfriend, boyfriend.
Yeah, don't rush into it. Wait 6 months before you have sex with anybody. Get to really know them.
That's not happening.
I know.
Nowadays.
Have dignity for yourself and the other person. Really get to know them. Get to know about their family. Get to know about their past. Know what you want. If you want kids and your partner doesn't, it's not going to work out. You're going to fight about it forever. Don't be, I don't know if the word picky is the right word. Don't try to change another person. If they do something you don't like, say they have a habit of leaving their dirty clothes on the floor. That's kind of a biggie for people. Dishwashers. People always, they argue about how the dishes should be put in the dishwasher. How does it in your family?
Just whoever does it, does it.
Oh, you don't go and move them around afterwards? Okay, lots of people do.
Yeah.
And they argue about dishwashers. So you just look the other way. You look at their good qualities, the things that were attractive to you, and that's what you focus on.
Okay. So, someone's going to go on a date tomorrow. So the 3 things that they should probably care the most about, and then the other things don't matter. What would you think it is?
Do they know each other very well?
Just met on online dating.
Online?
So, they've read a profile and they probably talked here and there, but
okay. All right. So they go to I always tell people, just go to coffee, don't go to dinner, because dinner takes too long. And if you don't like the person, you can't get out fast enough.
And then the guy has to pay for it, and then he kind of expects something out of it. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't, I think you go for coffee and you take your checklist. You can put it in your phone, bring a clipboard, I don't care. And for women, I always tell them to say, tell me about yourself. The first words out of his mouth. Well, let's try that here. If I were
not great
going to meet you, and
I haven't dated in so long,
and I said, tell me about yourself, what would you say?
I really don't know.
Is coffee over?
I mean,
what would you tell the person if they said, tell me about yourself? They're clearly interested in knowing how about you.
But it's kind of one of those things where I think of like, don't you know enough about me already? That's why we're here. So it's like, where would I?
Because you already kind of talked on the phone.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking more of a casual. You just met somebody at a restaurant or in the grocery store. And
so let's start that over. Then let's start the date over.
Okay. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm a father.
Oh.
So I have 2 boys.
Okay. So right there, if I never knew anything about you, and I was a person who was a whole lot younger and was meeting you, I would know that your family is really important
Yeah.
to you, and that's part of your role and your identity.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah. And that's why
Yeah.
I said it, because that's the most
Yeah.
important thing.
If the man says or the woman says, you know, I'm an attorney and I make a lot of money, then you know that person's focus is going to be their work
Yeah.
and their job.
I know some people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody else might say, well, you know, I just got out of divorce and that bitch, she took everything. That's when you get up and leave. You just say, oh, date's over. You know, he's still involved.
You could pull Adam Sandler and say, oh, my wife just died. She fell off a cliff and died on impact.
So whatever they start talking about is what you listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's smart, though, because if I did say that and that person didn't want kids, they're like, okay, well, yeah, this is over.
Yeah. I don't want somebody else's kids.
Perfect. Yeah.
Don't want to be a mom. Usually that works for women to say that to men. Men typically don't say that to women. Men usually talk about themselves.
Yeah. So that's funny you say that, because that would probably be the first thing I would ask someone.
Yeah.
Like, tell me something about yourself. Because I think I'm good, just even doing this, I'm good at listening, and then I'm good at, replying back. Not like what you want to hear, but like it kind of gives me the idea or the avenue to say, like, so tell me about yourself or whatever. And you say, well, I really like gymnastics. I'm like, oh, cool. My boys play gymnastics or something like that. So we could keep that conversation going. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would do something like that.
Yeah. Men, for some reason, talk about themselves. Women listen.
Mm-hmm.
So it works that way. And pay attention to body language. Mm-hmm. I always tell men, wear something. Men are visual. That's why pornography is more apt to be a male thing than a women thing. Typically, women get kind of bored with it. It's like same thing over and over and over again. So men are visual. They notice women. They notice bodies, how a person looks. And that's why women dress up and wear makeup and all of that stuff if they want to attract people. Women are tactile. We like to touch things. We like fuzzy things. We have, if you go in a store, like what we call women's store, women are always touching stuff. They got the bracelets out there, right? And we're touching them. The fluffy pillows, we're touching them. So men should always wear something that is touchable. Beards are good, nice beards, not the ugly beards. Clothes like you're wearing, they're soft, they're touchable. Levi's, something with texture.
If I ever become single and I'm on the market, I'm just going to wear like a jacket with fidget spinners all over the place.
With what?
Fidget spinners. Like the things that the kids mess with.
Yeah.
Good idea?
No. And so, and if men are dating, want to attract someone, what they should do if they are it's like sitting in chairs or at bar stools. I don't like people to meet in bars because they're drinking.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's too loud too sometimes. Yeah.
So if you're in a restaurant or whatever, the man should listen and he should lean in and talk, and then he should lean back and away.
And see if she comes to you.
It's just a way of this kind of thing, and that will attract her to you. Yeah.
That's good.
So that's
getting all the advice.
Kind of things you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's advice for, dating someone for the first time or.
Oh, and if a woman touches you,
it's a good sign.
She's really interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't keep their hands off of me.
It must be tough.
It is kind of tough. So how about to keep your marriage happy? Communication?
Yeah, that I think that's pretty individualized.
Yeah.
Some people like to go out. Some people like to travel. Some people like outdoor stuff. When you have things in common like that, I think it's good.
Okay.
Me, I'm really introverted, so I like to stay home. and read books. So somebody's got to be the same way as I am, or they're going to get really bored quick. I need brain candy all the time. So I need somebody that I'm going to talk to about things and ideas. I can't do chit-chat at a party.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah, I don't
so
do that
if you get somebody that's kind of like you, otherwise there's always going to be a conflict. You're always out with your friends and I'm at home, and that's going to be conflict. They say opposites attract, but I'm not sure. To some degree, maybe. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So that just comes back. So individual, and then also comes back to that getting to know someone before you jump into something and having
and again, commitment to the relationship. That I made this commitment and I'm going to follow through with it. I'm going to look out for my partner.
Yeah.
This is a partnership. I'm going to have that person's interest in mind. That person's going to have my interest in mind. When we do disagree, we're going to sit down and talk about it and see how we can make it work.
To end the show here, this could be a funny one, but so have you heard of like the red pill?
Yeah.
Man space or whatever it's called. It was kind of led by that Andrew Tate guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, and I kind of think it just depends on your geographic area. Back to like the people in the Midwest and stuff not getting divorced as much. It kind of further solidifies what I think of it. But it's basically, a man is a man and a woman should be more docile and like, and then also like the women nowadays are trying to, I think a big thing is the podcast where they bring in a group of 15 women and they ask them, what are you looking for a man? And a lot of the women say, they're like early 20s, mid 20s. And, they're saying, I want a guy that's 6'7". He makes $100,000 a year, blah, he's doing all this. And the guys from the very beginning are like, you're looking for like not even a 1% of men on earth. You're looking for a guy that makes this much money, is this tall and everything. And it's like, it kind of seems like they're trying to put it out that all women are really trying to get that.
That's really immature.
Yeah.
That's immature.
So you think that's immature on the females?
Yeah. A woman who says, I need a guy who's 6'2" or 7 or whatever and makes $100,000. You're looking at an object. You could have a robot, Yeah. You want a real person with feelings. And I mean, that's immature to look at a person as an object. That you've got to
I like that. That's the first time I've ever heard that. As far as like what we're talking about. Most of the talk is just like, well, most men aren't that. And what do you bring to the table because they're saying that's 1% of men. Yeah. So what do you bring to the table that you think that a 1% of men would want you? Yeah. When they could probably have any woman. Yeah. And then also like if they're in a relationship with you, they should probably be able to cheat because who are you compared to that 1%?
I would just say that's immature to think that way and to use people as an object to satisfy some ideal that you want, some fairy tale. That isn't very healthy. Yeah. I mean, it's unrealistic, but it's immature. Yeah. And if any woman said that, no.
Yeah, let's be more realistic.
Yeah. And what do you look for? You look for a person who's decent and honest, works, provides for a family. If you're not going to have kids, at least somebody who's committed to the relationship and to one another, look for a real person. Yeah. One thing I say to people who do have that kind of mindset, I say, so, okay, you find the guy who's 6'7" and he's got $100,000 and you marry him and, oh my gosh, you get the big house and you got the fancy car. And then he's in an accident and he breaks his back and he's in a wheelchair. He's not 6'7" anymore. And maybe he can't have sex anymore. How committed are you to that person? Because we go through life, we don't know what's going to happen. People get injured. People get brain damaged in cars. Are you committed to that person? Are you going to be there? that person has to be a real person too. They can't be an object or a source of income, you know?
Yeah.
Fall in love with the person.
Right.
Be a person who is big enough to love another human being.
Mm-hmm.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, yeah.
I could go for another hour.
Yeah. I could definitely too, because like I said, a lot of my stuff, when I think, sometimes I might just think in black and white. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like this. And actually, you know, I've always thought, I legit thought this till I got older, but I thought like mental health in general wasn't real.
Oh.
Because I guess I come from a family that we're all pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was issues within the family or whatever, but it's nothing major.
Mm-hmm.
I've always learned from my experiences, and that shaped me to who I am today. And I really like who I am. You know what I mean? So it's just things like that. So when I see people with like ADHD, I'm like, but do you really, or is that just like you're just trying to get attention? So I always have like that type of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then like now we have access to like podcasts and stuff like that, and people like you come on shows and talk, then you're like, oh, okay. Well, I've never thought of it that way. So that's what I'm saying. It's very educational for me to be able to sit down with you and you tell me things.
If you want to, if you get good feedback on this show, maybe we could do another one about what's called abnormal psych, my favorite, about the different disorders from severity and how common they are and what it looks like and how it affects people.
Yeah. No, I think we should definitely do that because I have a lot of questions on that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I see a lot of people post on their socials and they're like, oh, I have this problem. And I'm like, I kind of know you. And you're normal, and all of a sudden you have these problems. So it makes me wonder, like, is that really true? You're just crying for attention. What's really going on? Or is there really these issues?
You know, there's certain people who want to be sick, just like hypochondriacs want to be sick. But mental health does not have it's getting better as far as people being open with it. It still isn't on a parity of physical health. There's a lot going on, and I think there's some reasons why it's getting worse. But
mental health.
But anyway, we could do that if you want to at some time.
No, yeah, I definitely I'll have to prepare more for that, study more.
And we could talk about how do you get a diagnosis? What person comes in and they say they're bipolar. How do they know they're bipolar? What makes a person bipolar? You know, we could talk about that.
Have you seen a big uptick in, I guess, clientele? So I feel like the information is out there, so it's probably a lot easier to sit there and say like, oh, I have this, so maybe I should go.
Well, everything's online.
Yeah,
so people can self-diagnose.
Yeah.
Which is
not good.
Bullshit.
Yeah, but have you seen an uptick in clientele because of that?
I think it's just more open. I'm just really busy.
Okay, so you're just busy in general all the time.
I'm busy. I think since COVID too, you see more anxiety and depression, especially in young people. There was that disrupted some developmental stages. Yeah, see more of them.
Okay. Consider what I just said to you. Is depression real?
Is depression real?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There's two different kinds.
Okay.
But that's chronic or situational. I mean, we all have times when something bad happens and we're sad. And we may be sad for several months. But some people are chronically depressed, and that is a brain chemistry difference.
Oh, okay. So brain chemistry opposed to I just want to be this
situational depression.
Okay.
Yeah.
See? Super interesting.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to get you back on here. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're really busy, but you guys do have quite a bit of a staff at your location. So if anyone listening to this in the area.
Yeah. CR Counseling and Neurotherapy.
Okay. So look them up online and give them a call if you
We've got a website.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was fun.